Hello, Brad fans. What is up? How you doing? How you living? Today we are going to cover a couple of different stories, and I just want to say that we do have a special episode coming out that I've been struggling with, trying to get this story ready, trying to get this story told. I hope to have that out by the end of the month, so watch for it. And in the meantime, I just wanted to give you an episode with a couple cool stories that I found. Keep the feed active, feed the beast being you, the people. And I have a real special treat at the end of this episode. We are going to be hearing new music from my good friends in Calgary and friends of the show, the Dust Collectors. You'll get to hear their brand new track called Waiting Game and find out where to find their two recent EPs and pre-order an upcoming debut album. So stick around until the end for that. And of course, give us a follow wherever you're getting your podcasts, rate, review, subscribe. That really helps us out. Share us on your social media. Follow us on your social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at 2brad4u. You can also visit our website, 2brad4u.wordpress.com, and find out other ways you can get in touch with the show. And if you want to chip in a few bucks to help out, you can do that there too as well. At 2brad4u on the social medias. And yeah, give us a follow, rate, review, subscribe, all of that great stuff wherever you're getting your podcasts. But now we're going to start this episode off with a story I'm calling Jab GPT. The main story that I wanted to talk about today involves AI. And no, I'm not going to be talking about Chat GPT. I think we've heard about enough of that for the time being, and there's a lot of doom and gloom coming out of there, and honestly, I don't want to look at it anymore. There is a positive story coming out about AI, and that is in the realm of biotechnology. A new program has been designed called linear design, which is allowing researchers to optimize messenger RNA, mRNA vaccines to make them more stable, which means we can transport them at room temperatures, potentially, making them more accessible to poorer parts of the world where they don't have the electricity for refrigeration or the money to pay for cold transport, et cetera, et cetera. And by making them more stable, it's also possible that they will produce more antibodies, making them just better vaccines. And aside from this specific use case, which we'll discuss in a bit more detail, algorithms really lend themselves well to biotechnology because, and I'm no expert in algorithms or math, but at a rudimentary level definition, algorithms are really good at searching a data set, finding patterns given a specific parameter set that we define, and coming up with solutions to those questions based on the parameters that we've asked it to look in that would take us years and years and years to find. When there is such immense data sets and so many permutations, so many combinations of possible solutions to a given question, AI is amazingly good at cutting through all of that and finding us the solutions that we might need. And biology is this data set. We have a good understanding of the parameters that allow biological cells, biological things to function, to operate. We understand biochemistry. We understand which molecules are going to be attracted to other molecules, which then determines, for example, how a protein might fold. If you get a chain of amino acids, all these different molecules, you put them together, that's what makes up a protein. We understand the hydrogen bonds in this one are going to more likely attract to this one, given the space that they occupy, and that's going to cause the linear strand of amino acids to fold in a certain way and create the protein structure, right? Like, we understand how this works. We understand how the 4 base pairs of DNA, A, G, T, and C, code for these amino acids. We understand these things. However, the amount of variables that goes into how a protein is going to fold is incalculable by the human brain. It would just be too much. It takes too much time. We couldn't do it. We couldn't do it until AI algorithms came around and dramatically accelerated this process. And it's the same with the DNA coding for then the mRNA, the messenger RNA, which then codes for the protein. If you remember from your high school biology, you have 4 DNA base pairs, A, T, G, and C. Combinations of 3 of those are called codons, and different codons code for a specific amino acid. But because you have 4 base pairs, the amount of 3 base pair combinations you can make is huge. Yet there's only 20 amino acids. So multiple 3-letter codons will code for the same amino acid. But you can see how this right here is a massive computational lift. In order to make a protein, you need to know the amino acid structure, or you need to decide, I want to put these amino acids in this structure. The number of different ways you can do that with the codons that are available is huge. It's large. So algorithms cut through a lot of this noise for us. This is how we're able to sequence the genomes of organisms and then determine where the genes are, what genes they have. It's an algorithm that's going through and scanning for all the possible combinations of, well, if we start counting these 3 as a codon, and then the next 3 and the next 3 and next 3, what is that going to give us? Does it give us a protein that we already know exists? And we know that there's things like start and stop codons that tell you when a gene starts and when it stops, so the body knows to start translating at this point and stop at this point. So algorithms are searching these genomes, finding these codons, these start and stop positions, and then determining the sequence between them. And does that resemble something that we've already seen? What if we shift just one base pair over? That's a whole new combination of 3-letter sections all down the line. A whole nother permutation. This is what makes biology so incredible. This is why such complex structures can be achieved by living things, because the permutations that are available, the combinations that are available is almost limitless. And so I think I've made the point how useful AI can be for these tasks. Now, the new program, linear design, is being used to help optimize messenger RNA vaccines. We remember that messenger RNA vaccines are made by taking the protein that we want our cells to produce. Let's use the COVID example, the spike protein. We know the spike protein is made up of this sequence of amino acids, so we can translate that back into messenger RNA, create that messenger RNA molecule, put that into the cell, and our body will produce that section of the protein that we're looking for, that then stimulates our immune system and gives us the protective antibody production. The problem with messenger RNA vaccines are they are inherently unstable, meaning they degrade over time, especially at certain temperatures. And this is actually a good thing when it comes to biology. Evolution has made them this way, because if a messenger RNA sends the message to your cell to create a specific protein, once that's been created, if that's just constantly in your cell, you're constantly going to be creating that protein. So by having it degrade over time, it's like a natural break on the amount of protein that's produced. And then if your body needs more of it, it will send a signal to the cell to produce more of that messenger RNA, on and on. But it's useful to have it degrade in our bodies. It's not useful to have it degrade when we're trying to transport that vaccine to far-flung places in the world, especially if they don't have refrigeration, the money to pay for refrigerated trucks to bring that vaccine to where it needs to go. It just increases the cost, because in order to keep it stable in the vials for the vaccine, you got to keep it at about minus 15 degrees Celsius. If you could design a messenger RNA that still produces the same protein that we're looking for, but that it itself folds in a way again, based on the combinations of base pairs that you're using, they're going to have a certain attraction to each other. You could create a messenger RNA molecule, in theory, that folds back on itself, creating a double strand rather than a single strand. This would make it more stable. And that's exactly what this program, Linear Design, has been able to do. It's been able to search that data space of codon possibilities and how they're going to fold and just run through all the potential possibilities and spit out different combinations that are going to create molecules that are more structurally stable. We already do this a little bit for a thing called codon optimization. It turns out the body prefers certain codons over others. So, like I said before, there's a redundancy in the genetic code, right? You can have multiple 3-letter codons that code for the same amino acid. For whatever reason, the body prefers some over the others, and it will more efficiently translate those into proteins. So we already know this information, and we can put that level of design into the mRNA vaccine so that we can get more efficient production of the antigen, the protein that we're looking for to help produce more antibodies. Now it looks like we can do that on a structural level as well. So in very early stages, very early tests, researchers have found they can improve the shelf life of these vaccines, so how long it's going to last in solution when kept at body temperature. So that's a big win right there. The next thing is by having a more structurally robust messenger RNA, they actually get more production of antibodies as well. 128 times more production of antibodies has been seen in some mouse trials. There's a couple companies that are playing with this, and there's one COVID vaccine that has been optimized in this way that has been approved for emergency use in Laos. So it's a early human trial going on right now, and we'll wait to see what the data looks like in humans because, of course, with everything, there is a risk of side effects. When we create these messenger RNAs that loop back on themselves, that create this double-stranded structure, it's possible that the immune system will be overly provoked by this. And this is because double-stranded RNA structures are found in viruses. So the human immune system is really primed to look for these and react to them. So it's possible that you could overstimulate the immune system. However, early data is showing that that is not a problem. The risks appear to be about the same as they were for the regular COVID mRNA vaccines, which, as we know, there is risks, but it's still way lower than the risk of getting the disease. So very, very promising program. Apparently it takes only a couple minutes to run on a desktop computer. So you don't even really need that much computing power to do this, which is also just amazing. And this story for me is really cool because it highlights one of the main reasons why I am so fascinated by biology, because we understand, like I said, we understand how biology works, but there's just so many variables, so many possibilities that we just can't grasp. And this is why people talk about, the DNA, like a DNA type computer. Rather than a binary system that works on zeros and ones, you have 4 potential options. So the amount of computing power that you have using that, just using that 4 base pair set is immense. And you have the body's feedback mechanisms that control all of this. It's like a beautiful chaotic ballet where molecules are produced and then they find the target place that they need to go to, sometimes just by, probability of we produce so much, a bunch of them are just going to find the right place. But there's biochemistry involved, like I've been talking about this whole time, the way that things are attracted to each other via physics and chemistry. And it's all just occurring all the time in your body. And you're producing too much protein, and then that sets off a signal that sets off a cascade of pathways that creates a protein or an mRNA or something that then degrades that protein and chops it all up, and then that sends a signal to something else to go to the DNA to latch on there and open it up and start translating another gene. Like, it's just this fascinating, chaotic process that's unfolding all the time throughout your life, and that's coding for all of this immense diversity that we see just within our bodies and within the kingdom of life. All the life on the planet operates on this computing system, and that is, to me, just so fascinating. And it's filled with immense possibilities. And AI being able to help us churn through all of this data and create these fine-tuned proteins that we need to, say, rescue somebody from disease. Oh, you're not producing this protein because you have a genetic mutation? We can build that protein for you. And we can build it in a way that we know it's going to be safe because we've tested all of these different parameters. We can build it in a way that we know is going to be efficient. It sounds science fiction and it sounds kind of creepy, and it is. And there's tons of ethical questions and tons of safety and tons of trials that need to be done. But the possibilities are just so cool. And so when I saw this story come up in my inbox, in my feeds, I was just really drawn to it because it just shows the power that computation and AI has in this space. And given that we've heard all of these negative stories about AI and algorithms, et cetera, I wanted to talk about this because I think it's a really cool use of algorithms and a really positive one. So, turning from cutting edge biotechnology to a more, let's say, analog version, we have a bioethics story that is kind of funny, but also serious, and probably something that you don't think a lot about, and that is sperm donation. So a recent story out of the Netherlands involves a man who allegedly has fathered between 500 and 600 kids via sperm donation. This is through clinics and also private arrangements, I guess, that he had made. And the courts have now banned him from donating any more sperm. It's too much sperm. We got too much sperm here, bud. And he faces fines of 100,000 euros if he breaks this agreement. And the reasons that this was brought to the courts, I believe it was one of the parents of one of the children that were fathered using this man's sperm, brought the case forward. And the argument is that they're now part of this kinship network, these kids of half siblings across potentially multiple countries, that they never really intended. Dutch law states that you should only be allowed to father 25 children in 12 different families using, donated sperm. And so this, he falsified documents allegedly to be able to get around that, to hide the fact that he was donating so much, which makes me question the motivation. Like, what is the motivation behind this? I don't think it was financial. I'm not sure if the Netherlands compensates you for sperm donation, but even if they do, I don't think the motivation here would be financial. The compensation is usually not that much. So that's an interesting aside. But the rights of the children to, it sounds odd, but the courts agreed that there's a potential psychological harm to being part of this unknown large kinship network. They deemed, quotes from the judge and testimony and stuff was just that, like, it's too large. We don't know what the psychological impact would be on those children. And then there is a fear of potential incest if you have so many unknown half siblings, related people in a relatively small country. What are the acceptable odds that two of these people might meet and form a relationship without knowing that background? That's a weird one too. So it's not the sperm donation has been around for a while. There was an article related to this that came up in Belgium, where I'm living right now, and they talked about, obviously the hook was, could this man have donated in Belgium as well, and neighboring countries, et cetera, et cetera. The likelihood is, they say, is low that happened. But the other point that this article makes is that there's actually a need for sperm donation. There is an unmet need, at least in Belgium. So there's more people wanting to use this service than there are donors. So again, not something we think about, and I made the joke at the beginning of this segment, rather analog form of biotechnology. But on the surface, it's kind of funny. It gave me a quick giggle because I'm ridiculously immature. But a lot of interesting questions that come out of this, that we don't think of, and I think bioethics and the ethics of some of this stuff. Obviously we think about stem cells and where do stem cells come from. There was, at the beginning, stem cells were often taken from aborted fetal tissue. Now we have other ways of getting them, but the story of the Chinese scientists that used CRISPR to alter the embryos, human embryos, so the first CRISPR babies, that was a massive scandal. And with the types of technology that I'm kind of talking about in this episode, at the beginning of the episode, we can see the obvious ethical concerns and safety concerns and all this, but a story like this kind of flips it back to the, just the basics, we'll say, and shows what a tricky space biology is when it comes down to us human beings, our identity, who we are, our genetics, our relationships to other humans, our inheritance, our inherited makeup, our cultural makeup. There's really, really, really tricky questions. And I think, first off, I would like to say that, maybe I present my optimism for the biotechnology future in a way that seems to, let's say, downplay some of these questions and risks. And I don't want that to be the case. I want to make it very clear that with this technology comes, very great responsibility. And that's why we should have these discussions. We should be open to these discussions rather than, black and white thinking, which we kind of see all over the place. And I don't want to go on too big of a tangent here, but like I said, just a story that I didn't see coming. Unfortunately, the Netherlands this is like the third story in the last 5 years that has come out about the Netherlands and fertility clinics. So I don't know what's going on in the Netherlands. The other two involved doctors using their own sperm as donations when the women didn't consent to that. They thought they were getting sort of anonymous donations and the doctor was using his own sperm. And then fathering, like 50 kids or something like this. Like this happened twice in like 2019 and 2020 in the Netherlands, two separate incidents, and now this. So I don't know. Maybe the Netherlands needs to get a handle on what's going on over there. There's just too much sperm. These Dutch guys just have too much sperm. The other interesting thing that popped up in the related article about this, which will all be linked in the show notes, in Belgium, is they talked about creating a database of donors, right? So there's already a lot of strict, testing that has to be done on the donations in order to, screen for obvious problems, right? But they're talking about making a database, and advocates were saying like, well, why hasn't this database been made yet? And the government kind of sounds like the government is saying that we're going to do it. We're going to do it right away. Kind of maybe spurred on by this latest Dutch serial sperm donor. And that, you could see privacy issues on that side too, right? Obviously, I think if you're going to donate your sperm, you would understand that the parents have a right to know who donated it, but how much should they know? You don't. I'm just kind of spitballing off the top of my head here, but like, what are what are the implications of that? Will it drive more people to not donate? And you're already saying that you have an unmet need. I don't know. These are all open questions. And I just thought it was a funny tag to the first story that we had, where you have this very high-minded technology, biotechnology, future AI helping us design these amazing new vaccines and stuff. And yet we still wrestle with the basic bioethic questions of sperm donation, which while it is a technological feat and not something that was available forever, well, maybe in some rudimentary forms, but you see what I'm saying. Fascinating yet hilarious yet disturbing story out of the Netherlands. So way to go, Holland, for giving us that one. And I think we'll leave it there. There was another interesting story in The Economist that focused on something that we talked about on previous episodes, and that is the rise in teenage depression and anxiety, especially among adolescent females, and how that coincides with the invention of the smartphone. And without breaking down too much, it was just an interesting piece that maybe I'll link to as well in the show notes, because it was a nice example of using data to try and parse through this. And they're making the claim that maybe the association isn't as strong as we might think. Obviously, there's lots of reason to believe or to assume, sort of, maybe assume is the wrong word, hypothesize that smartphone social media can have a negative impact on the mental health of young people, especially females. I think that's a pretty straightforward argument. But when you look at data and the rates of these increases, it's not uniform across all countries. So yes, smartphone adoption culturally and just with the availability of these things maybe happened at different times in these countries. So there's a caveat there. But I just thought it was an interesting point to make, that maybe it's too simple and we're running for those, black and white kind of thinking that I was just talking about, where it's like smartphone bad, social media bad, look what it's done, it's ruined our kids, when there's probably more going on there. It's one of many factors. And so the fact that you don't see this, universal rise in these things across countries is just a very basic point that this article makes. They go into some more nuance about the differences in, how you measure those kind of things. You can't. It's difficult to sort of just measure, like, are you depressed, are you anxious, and stuff in a broad population. So they look at rates of self-harm, attempted suicide, something where someone has been taken to a hospital to be treated for that. So there's a record of it, and it was just an interesting thing to show how you use data to look at these things. We have this association, especially in, I believe, you could say the United States, probably Canada, and the UK, where smartphones are introduced and the depression and anxiety rates among young females goes up. Another interesting thing they point out in this story is that while that rate has gone up for females, it still is below the rate for males. Young males commit suicide at a way higher rate, and that's remained stable. That hasn't really gone up with the advent of smartphones. So what does that say? What can we learn from that, or what questions should we then ask based on that piece of information? So another story I'll link to, and then we are going to end it here, wrap it up here. Like I said, I got a really special episode that I'm struggling to get out. It should be out by the end of the month, so please watch for that. It involves a workshop that I did in Berlin with the Mind Foundation that you've heard me talk about many, many times, a nonprofit that's working to bring psychedelics to the clinic. This was a workshop about the role of psychedelics outside of the clinic and helping people navigate not necessarily drug-induced, but just any sort of psychedelic experience. So breath work, meditation, just life, and getting the most out of these states. Like, what is the goal for this project? If we are going to be, exploring these states of consciousness and stuff, how can we be getting the most out of them? Was the nature of the workshop, and it's a question that I am deeply interested in, and I think it's an important one. As laws are changing around these things, we should have, again, a conversation as to what that means. What is the role of these things in our society? So that'll be coming out, and then, as promised, you are going to hear a track from my good friends, the Dust Collectors, a band out of Calgary, Alberta. I know all of these guys. Some of them I have known since, the 5th grade, the 7th grade. We used to play music together. They are playing music right now. They have just come out with a great album. It will be coming out within a couple weeks, I believe, end of the month, end of May. And you can check out their website, thedustcollectors.com. They're also pretty active on Instagram, so check them out on Instagram at the Dust Collectors Music. And I wanted to play for you a track because I really love the band. They've been supportive of the podcast, so we're sharing the love. And this is a great track called Waiting Game. Check out again the website, thedustcollectors.com. They have some upcoming shows in May, and then into the summer if you're in the Calgary and Alberta area. And hopefully we can get the boys on one day to talk about, maybe we'll talk about AI in music. We'll talk about the role of music in culture and psychology, what it does to our brain and how important that is, and the different sorts of, let's say, peak states you can get from music. All sorts of interesting questions about music and science that we could weave together. So check out thedustcollectors.com, give them a follow on Instagram. And of course, all of these tracks are available on Spotify, so check them out on Spotify. And I will talk to you all next time. Here is Waiting Game by the Dust Collectors.
Said it was easy. That's just the
There you go. And as always, follow us on Instagram, on Twitter at 2brad4u. Visit the website 2brad4u.wordpress.com. Follow us and review, rate, all of that stuff. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That really helps us out. Share us with your friends. Let people know. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you later. Bye for now.